Ezekiel 33 declares, "But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, and the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity. But his blood I will require at the watchman's hand." What that means is basically God's calling people to be watchmen and being aware of it and speaking up when they see trouble or problems or issues. I'm speaking with Bill Federer, and we're talking about his new book, Silence Equals Consent. Bill, go on with your thought from the previous segment.
Right, so Romans 13 is understood differently in a monarchy versus a republic. In a monarchy, subjects submit to the king. In a republic, the citizens are the king.
Wow.
And the politicians are your servants. You hire them, you fire them, right? It'd be silly for a king to have to obey his janitor, right? And so for the people to say, well, you got to submit to the government, it's like, you need to pick up and go over and live in China, right? Surrender your conscience to the government, right? But in America, we, the citizens, are the king. And it's interesting, this New England model, they had one building in town called the Meeting House. And that's where the pastor would teach the Bible, and that's where they would gather together and do their city business. The word synagogue means meeting house. That's where the rabbi would teach the law, and that's where they would gather together and do their city business. I mean, why build a separate building just to talk about a different topic? And so when the revolution starts, the British send over a military governor, Thomas Gage, and he outlaws meeting houses. We don't need the people meeting and giving your consent.
Wow.
You just obey government mandates. And we're like, no, nothing happens in America unless we give our consent, right? We got this idea from the New England pastors who got their idea from the Reformation, who got their idea from Israel, what part of Israel, that first 400 years out of Egypt before King Saul, the Hebrew Republic. And so King Saul, in a sense, is the divider between England and America. Kings of England look to the Bible, they look to the King Saul and on. Founders of America look to the Bible, the pre-King Saul period. Millions of people, everyone's taught the law and accountable to God to follow it. Individually, right. And so and one of the stories is Saul is pouting that his son Jonathan became friends with David. And he turns, one soldier, Doeg the Edomite, says, "King, I'm your friend. I saw David go to this town. The priest gave him some bread and the sword of Goliath." And Saul says, "Bring the priest to me." When they show up, he turns to his soldiers and says, "Kill him." The soldiers hesitate, and Doeg goes out there and kills them all. What just happened? The soldiers were operating under the old system where each individual soldier is personally accountable to God to follow the law, and the law says you need 2 or more witnesses before you condemn somebody to death. There's only one witness, this Doeg guy, and they're hesitating. "Okay, King, you're telling me to kill, and I'm accountable to God, and there's supposed to be 2, and there's only 1. Doeg says, "King, I'm going to surrender my conscience to you. I'm going to surrender my conscience to the government. If the government tells me to kill, I'll kill. Kill the baby in the womb, I'll kill it. Tell me there's no more male and female. I'm just a bunch of mush. When the government blows its trumpets and issues a mandate, I'll bow to its statue." God's jealous. He does not want the government between you and him, right? And so in America, the citizen is the king, and they had this one building, and the British send over this military governor, Thomas Gage, and he outlaws meeting houses. We don't need the people meeting and giving their consent. You just obey government mandates. And we're like, no, nothing happens in America unless we give our consent. He's like, no, you obey government mandates. And we're like, no, nothing happens unless we give our consent. He's like, no, you're a robot, you're a zombie. When the government issues a mandate, you just jump. And we're like, no, nothing happens unless we give our consent. Turns into a revolutionary war and we win.
Hey.
And we set up a government where it's we the people, government from the consent of the government. It's a polarity change in the flow of power. Instead of top down, like a dead pyramid, it's like a living tree, bottom up. And so that's the 1600s. And it was a revolutionary century of people coming up. The word federal is Latin for covenant. We have a covenant form of government where we the people rule from the consent of the governed. And but after a century, it got a little dry. And you had Yale, Harvard, and the Puritan teaching that God's got a plan for your life, your marriage, your family, church. But some of them took it the next step and said, God in his infinite wisdom already knows who's going to wind up in heaven. So don't even bother preaching the gospel.